Hey, and welcome back to another video of Antimatter Chemistry. And right now we are in my creative world. There was a question in one of the episodes, and it was regarding energy production in antimatter chemistry. And I said, yeah, why not make a video on energy production in general, not only one stage of antimatter chemistry. In this mod pack, energy is quite simple. In early game, you will be using a lot of food in order to produce energy. And while you move to the later stages of the game, you can do a bit more variety regarding energy production. In this video, I'll showcase. I'm not going to detailedly explain every single way of producing energy. I'm just going to showcase the 4 ways I used to produce energy throughout the game until the point I am right now, which is basically endgame. And by the end, I'll tell you some kind of different tips that you can use in order to make something different, for example. In general, I used 4 sources of energy. 3 of them are food, and one of them is an item. I used toasted bread in the very early game, then moved into Bum's Pineapple Pizza, then moved into the Domino's Special, and finally right now my main source of energy are ender pearls. So in early game, once you complete the first task, which is just a check mark, you will get a bunch of new items. One of them will be the culinary generator, and this is going to be your first way of producing energy. The culinary generator allows you to get energy from any food source, but of course for that you need to grow food. One of the early foods you will be able to grow is wheat. This wheat, you can turn it into bread to produce 24,000 RF in total at a rate of 40 RF per tick. Or you can bake this once more, the bread, to get toasted bread in order to get 33,600 RF in total at a rate of 48 RF per tick. All of this is considering you don't have any speed upgrades in the culinary generator. Early game, you won't get any speed upgrades, so let's just keep these numbers like this. The good thing of this mod pack is that we have a speed growth whenever you maintain the shift key pressed. So whenever you are crouched, your crops will grow quicker. So it's something that you can take advantage of. You can stay like this for a very long time and be able to gather a lot of wheat, which then you can use to produce a bunch of energy. If you add one extra step using the same toast, you can craft Bum's Pineapple Pizza. Crafting Bum's Pineapple Pizza is very cheap. You either need 5 regular bread to get 1 pineapple pizza, or you can use 5 toasted bread to get 4 pineapple pizzas. I would totally recommend to use Bum's Pineapple Pizza instead of the toasted bread, as you will be producing way more energy. But that will only be the case if you use toasted bread as a recipe ingredient for the pineapple pizza, not the regular bread. So I do totally recommend to use Bum's Pineapple Pizza. You will get way more RF in total, as well as more RF per tick. So don't just burn the toasted bread, turn the toasted bread into Bum's Pineapple Pizza. Whenever you get machines, you will be able to passive all of this process without having to intervene in any of these steps. You will first need to craft bread, then bake it into toasted bread, and then use it to craft the Bum's Pineapple Pizza. You can be able to do this using the thermal expansion machines, as well as RFTools Crafter. The thing with the redstone furnace and any other thermal expansion machine is that it requires machine frames. And you can start crafting machine frames at chapter number 3. So it's not something you will be doing very early in the game. An example of a setup you can use in order to passive the Bum's Pineapple Pizza is something like this. So you need to grow wheat somehow. In my case, I use phytogenic insulators, as I had a very good source of phytogrow. Of course, if you are using phytogenic insulators, you also need a setup for phytogrow, so consider that. The wheat from here, I would pulverize it to get the A2 flour. Instead of using 3 wheat to craft 1 bread, what you can do is pulverize 1 wheat to get 1 flour, and that flour you can bake it to get 1 bread. So differently from crafting it directly into bread, you can get 3 bread from 3 wheat. Then the bread gets toasted once to get the toasted bread. And finally, the toasted bread gets crafted into Pam's pineapple pizza and then redistributed into as many culinary generators you have. The good thing of using the redstone furnaces from thermal expansion is that there is an augment, the reaction chamber, which, as in the description says, you gain additional food when cooking. Basically, you get double the output. If you toast 1 bread, you'll get 2 toasted bread. The same if you bake 1 flour, you'll get 2 bread. So I do totally recommend using the reaction chamber. You will get a lot more of gains. Instead of having 1 toasted bread per 1 wheat, you will end up having 4 toasted bread per each 1 wheat. The flour will turn into 2 regular bread, and those 2 regular bread into 4 toasted bread. So totally recommend using this. When it comes to the phytogenic insulator, you really don't need this. Instead, you should be able to use a combination of a plant gatherer and a plain sower from industrial foregoing in order to mass produce crops. Of course, this requires a bit more of a complex system. Well, not really complex, it should be quite easy. I invite you to try it. But you can use a combination of these two, as well as maybe adding 1 growth crystal once you get to farm rare loot crates. For example, as these growth crystals, they require potions, sea lanterns. The tier 2 requires nether stars and more growth crystals. So it's not something that, well, you can do it early in the game, but it's a bit complicated to do. It's your decision either to use the regular phytogenic insulator and build a passive processing line for phytogrow, or use industrial foregoing and maybe add in a growth crystal to make it quicker. Either way, it's your choice how to set up all of this. Moving into mid-game, you can upgrade your pizza into Domino's Special. Well, it's not that you upgrade it, you have to craft this from 0. The Domino's Special will burn a total of 126,934 RF at the rate of 96 RF per tick. Again, this considering you don't have any speed upgrades. However, by this time in the game, you should already be able to craft speed upgrades, even until the magical tier. So it's something that you should consider to craft if you want to raise that rate per tick of energy produced. However, this is a bit more complicated to craft, and basically it's complicated because you need to get a source of meats. As you could have noticed in Antimatter Chemistry, in the Antimatter dimension, there is no passive mobs. In the Deep Dark, there are also no passive mobs other than squids that you can basically force spawn, kind of thing. In the Nether, nor the End, you won't find any passive mobs. So where can you find them? For passive mobs, you will need to enter into RFTools dimensions. That's why this is quite a mid-game way of producing energy. For Dimension Builder, you need to get into Chapter 6, which is where you unlock nether stars, basically. You could do the nuclear craft already, the fission reactor, and get a lot more of energy. But it's just your choice. I just decided to go for pizzas because I found it quite interesting to produce energy from pizzas. So I said, why not? Once you get into a dimension, you can gather some meats in order to use it for the Domino's Special. The way I passively farm these meats was through apotheosis generators. I managed to get a spawn egg of each animal that drops these raw meats, and make a small mob farm for that. For apotheosis, you have the capturing enchanted book, which will make mobs have a chance to drop their spawn egg. That's how you get the spawn eggs in order to use them in the spawners for apotheosis. Apart from the meats, You will also need a constant supply of mushrooms as well as regular bread. A small example of a setup that you can use is first have a line for bread. You can use the same you used here, but you just skip the toasted bread part. The same, this redstone furnace, it has a 3-vection chamber to get an extra output on bread. Then you will need one redstone furnace per each meat that you are cooking. And again, 3-vection chamber to have an extra output of meats. Not that I needed it. If you use apotheosis spawners, you will get a lot of drops. So you really don't need this, but I mean, let's do it right. Right. And then you will need not two, but you will need a way to produce a bunch of mushrooms. It has to be the brown mushrooms. In my case, while setting up all of this, I noticed that I needed more mushrooms than I needed bread or meats. So having a bit more of production of mushrooms compared to the rest should be something that you should consider. And again, in my case, I use a lot of photogenic isolators, as at this point, I had a good production of flutes phytogra. It's your decision what to use for farming crops. Finally, all of this gets used to craft the Domino's special. And then this one, you can burn it in as many culinary generators as you have. Now, for me, these pizzas got me into the end game, into this chapter. I managed to produce a lot of energy before I managed to craft the neutron collectors. While entering into the final chapter, I noticed that I needed more energy. The problem with the culinary generators is that the speed upgrades, they require a lot of GP in order to use. And the way I was producing GP is through dragon egg mills. And there is just so many dragon egg mills you can put before you get an efficiency, efficiency discount in efficiency rate. So I really didn't want to spam way more dragon egg mills. For that, you have 4 more ways of producing energy, and this is more endgame related. The way I'm using to produce a lot of energy is through Endergenic Generators from RFTools. This is a very powerful way of producing energy, and it is very simple. The problem with the Endergenic Generator is that the setup itself, if you want to do it by yourself without any guide, it is very complicated because you have to do a lot of timing. The idea with the Endergenic Generator is that it will launch a pearl into another Endergenic Generator, and that pearl launch will produce energy. You have a lot of small factors that comes into play that I don't understand, and that's why I won't explain how all of this works. I just know that this works. And of course, I have to thank Timur at a random forum, Minecraft forum, put this setup here together. This is quite an old setup. It's not something recent. So Timur, thank you for your contribution. If you want to set up this layer of Endergenic generators, I will leave a link in the description to the forum post. He or she basically explains it very nicely, how to set up this. So to take a look at that if you want to use Endergenic generators. I'm not going to explain how this works or how this is set up. Again, this is just a small showcase of energy generation. The interesting fact is that this will produce somewhere around 6,000 and 9,000 RF per tick per layer. And again, this layer here, this setup is very, very cheap. Very cheap. Maybe what you are going to be needing a lot are ender pearls. And again, the way I'm producing ender pearls is the same way I'm producing meats, the raw meats, through apotheosis spawners. So I do totally recommend to use Endergenic generators. They're very cheap and very simple. And even better, you should be able to stack the layers, so you can have a lot of these in the same layer and produce a lot of energy. So yeah, it is quite nice. Now we also have 3 more ways of producing energy. One of them is the Rainbow Generator from Extra Utilities 2. The challenge of passiving this generator is that you need to have every other generator producing energy before you can get way more energy from the Rainbow Generator itself. So that's a challenge. How do you passive every other generator so you can produce a lot of energy using this? The next way, which is somewhere between mid-game and end-game, is the fission reactors from Nuclear Craft. In the quest book, you have a comprehensive guide of how to use this fission reactor. It includes all of the burn and reprocessing lines, the isotopic separation lines, what you can decay haste, and what you need to craft. And of course, everything starts from either uranium or thorium, which by this point in the game, you should have a bunch of it. So if you want to get into the complex world of nuclear craft, I totally invite you to start burning some TBU fuel in order to produce a lot of energy. And of course, follow the guide that it is in the quest book. If you have problems building a reactor, you can use the link that is in the quest book as well to have a guide of a already done layout. But I don't think it is already done or not, but it is a guide, so take advantage of that. And finally, one of the most endgame ways of generating energy is through Draconic Evolution's Draconic Reactor. However, the main challenge of this is that you require chaos shards in order to both craft the reactor core as well as starting produce energy using this. I think you need chaos shards in order to produce energy. I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me on that. This is a very endgame way of producing energy. However, it's really one of the best, as you only need to input some energy to get a lot of energy back. So it is something that you can use to input energy and recycle it to produce more energy. And that's the challenge on it, like how much energy you have to input and output. So if you want to do that and you're not afraid of exploding your world, I would totally recommend using the Draconic reactors. Now you have a bunch more ways of producing energy. One of them is of course through thermal expansion dynamos. You can look at the tooltips for extra information on how to use all of these dynamos. If you're going to be using dynamos, one of the best ways is through using the magmatic dynamo. The magmatic dynamo will burn either lava or blazing parathium in order to produce RF. Blazing parathium, you can easily craft this and passive it. I'm actually passiving it for my ore processing setup, so it should be fairly easy to use blazing parathium as a energy production. However, another simple thing is to pump lava from the nether using the builder's pump shape card. This doesn't use that very much energy, and you get a lot of lava from it. And just like that, there is way more ways of producing energy, but these ones are the ones I would recommend to use. And these ones in specific, as well as the Endergenic generators, are the ones I'm using or I used in my world. So if you want to just copy and use the same ways of producing energy for your world, you're very welcome. Or if you want to experiment something different, maybe using Rainbow Generator or the Nuclear Craft fission reactors, even using the Draconic reactors, I would totally recommend you to go for that. It should be a very fun experience. However, that's all for me. Thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you have a better day, because it can always be better. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.